Same situation as Janelle is in, and all of my kids were going to be in town, I for sure would want to go be with them.
Christine always believed in the power of quiet strength. Not the kind that yells to be heard, but the kind that stays. The kind that holds hands through the night, signs the forms no one else wants to read, and still gets up in the morning to pack lunchboxes like nothing broke. But something did break. And it didn't shatter with a bang. It fractured with a silence so cold, so intentional, that it was louder than any slammed door. When Christine returned to Sedona, she was already bruised. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. She didn't expect fanfare. She didn't even expect an apology. What she didn't expect, though, was a folder. Crisp, creased, and heavy in her hand. That folder held a single hospital bill. No notes, no explanation. Just a number. $450,000. Not a typo. Not a misplaced comma. Not a misreading in panic. $450,000. The price tag of one night that split a life in two. And when she showed it to the cameras, held it up, not for drama, but for documentation, she wasn't doing it for attention. She was doing it to say, I will not carry your silence anymore. Christine had always been the most loyal of the sister wives. She kept the peace. She helped raise the children, hers and others. She shared kitchens and heartbreaks, smiled when she wanted to scream, and waited for love that never quite arrived. But that night in Sedona, something inside her changed. And it started, not with an explosion, but with a phone call in the middle of the night. Her daughter's voice came through the phone, sharp and panicked. Not just discomfort, but unbearable. Pain. Christine didn't pause. She didn't debate. She didn't wonder if it was serious. Her body moved before her mind did, throwing on a sweatshirt, grabbing her purse, and flying down the stairs. The hospital was over 30 minutes away, and in those 30 minutes, everything changed. She made 2 calls on the way. One to a friend, one to Kody. Not because she expected him to help, but because she thought he deserved to know. That was her. Mistake, he answered, groggy and unbothered. She told him the situation. Emergency, surgery likely, their daughter, a child in crisis. There was a pause. And then came the words she still hears like a song she never asked to learn. Is this really something you need me for? He wasn't angry, he wasn't panicked. He sounded inconvenienced, like she'd interrupted a meeting, or a nap, or a thought. He added something about real estate, about needing to focus on his business, about putting bread on the table. That's when she knew she was on her own. He never showed up. He didn't call the next morning. He didn't ask for updates. When she sent a picture of their daughter lying in a hospital bed, tubes in her arm, pale and fragile, his only reply was a thumbs-up emoji. That was the moment Christine stopped calling. The surgery happened that same day. Emergency intervention. The doctors later told her that if she'd waited even an hour longer, the consequences would have been irreversible. Christine didn't leave her daughter's side. Not for meals, not for sleep, not for a moment. She signed every form, accepted every bill, nodded through every conversation about billing departments and financial obligations, with a silent scream building inside her chest. And when the first estimate came, $112,000, Christine blinked hard and kept going. By the time they got home, the costs had ballooned. Emergency surgery, $38,000. Intensive care, $74,000. Separate surgeon's fees, $8,000. Aftercare, scans, prescriptions, therapy. The total, $450,000, not including future follow-ups. Christine did what she always did. She checked the paperwork. She called the insurance line. She waited on hold for 72 minutes just to hear a sentence that changed everything. Your policy lapsed. She blinked. That's not possible, she said. But it was. Kody had allegedly been responsible for updating their shared policy. He had the login. He had the renewal date. Christine didn't even know the policy was expired. No coverage, no help, no escape. She sat at the kitchen table, the bills spread, out like confetti from a party she never agreed to attend. Some of the charges made her laugh. $200 for tissues? $350 for a single IV push? She laughed. And then she cried. And that's when the memory came rushing back. Years ago, Before the cracks in the family widened into gulfs, Kody had called a budgeting meeting. The whole family was there. He'd talked about contingency planning, emergency savings, something about creating a household reserve fund, a pot for the unexpected, floods, fires, and yes, medical emergencies. Christine had forgotten about it, or tried to, because when she asked about it after their separation, Kody dismissed her. "There was never a real fund," he said. "You must be misremembering." But Christine isn't the type to forget. She went digging. Deep into a file box she'd hauled from Flagstaff to Utah, underneath old photos and tax receipts, she found it. A dusty folder labeled Household Reserve. Inside were typed notes, spreadsheets, and signatures, including Kody's. The fund had existed, contributions tracked, and a clause, "All children shall be treated equally and covered in the event of medical emergency regardless of maternal affiliation." She held the paper like it might bite her. "So where was the money?" she asked Kody again. Calmly. A text. "She's recovering. The totals come in. Can we talk about how to handle it?" He replied 2 hours later. "That's a big number. I'll have to think about it." Days passed. No follow-up. So she texted again. His next reply? Longer this time. Something about an advisor. Legal complications. Liabilities. "My liabilities are all tied up." It read like a boardroom memo, not a father's note about his daughter. And then came the third message. Final. Cold. "Not my liability." Those words didn't just hurt. They rewrote everything she thought she knew about him. Because just days after that, Christine heard from a source, one of the other wives, that Kody had sent money. $15,000. Not for the hospital. Not for his daughter. But for Robin's child's private school tuition. Christine didn't confront him. She didn't scream. She didn't call a family meeting. She did what she'd learned to do over years of being dismissed. She documented every message, every voicemail, every unanswered call. She saved it all because she knew that someday someone would ask, "Why didn't you try harder?" And she wanted to be able to say, "I did." She started asking quiet questions, not just to Kody, but to the bank, to anyone who might know where the household reserve account had gone. And that's when the real twist emerged. The account had been emptied, just weeks before the hospital visit. The timing was surgical. Christine doesn't know who withdrew the money, yet. But the documents are clear. Someone with access moved the funds. The paper trail exists, and the signatures are under review. Some say she's already spoken to a lawyer. Others whisper that she's compiling everything to go public, not to expose him, but to protect herself and her children from being rewritten out of the family's story. Because this isn't just about betrayal, it's about selective responsibility. Kody always seemed to have energy for Robin's needs. Her kids' tuition, her mortgage, her furniture. But when Christine asked for help during a literal life or death moment for their daughter, radio silence. The other wives have said little. Some remain tight-lipped, bound by loyalty or legal silence. But one thing is becoming clear. Christine wasn't just ignored. She was outnumbered. And she's not hiding anymore. This isn't a story about money. It's a story about value. About what we do when someone we loved, someone we shared homes and hearts with, looks at our pain and says, "Not my problem." Christine loved Kody. She stood by him. She raised his children. She lived the life they all agreed to. But the night her daughter's health hung in the balance, when she needed partnership and support, not sentiment or silence, he disappeared. And so, Christine did what any strong woman eventually learns to do. She saved herself. Not with rage. Not with revenge. But with receipts. And when the day comes that the truth unfolds in full, it won't be about bitterness. It will be about boundaries. Because you can forgive someone for breaking your heart. But you don't have to forget when they refuse to help save your child's life.
Christmas, everybody was quarantining, everybody was prepping for Christmas, and then we got some really sad news.
Between the quiet devastation of Kody's infamous "not my liability" message and the day the final hospital invoice landed in Christine's mailbox, something irrevocable shifted. Not a loud, dramatic rupture. No slammed doors or screaming matches, but a silent internal break. The kind of snap that doesn't echo through the house but permanently alters the foundation beneath it. According to someone deeply embedded in her inner circle, Christine, once the most loyal and dutiful of all the sister wives, picked up the phone that week and made an appointment with a lawyer. This wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. Protection for herself, for her daughters, and for every year she'd spent quietly carrying financial burdens while Kody lived in a home decorated with throw pillows that cost more than her monthly grocery bill. Christine had tried to give him grace. Over and over, she'd extended the benefit of the doubt. But that grace had run out. Now it was about survival. The attorney reportedly asked her to begin compiling a full record. Communications, bank statements, family financial documents, anything that could show a pattern. Christine, meticulous and detail-oriented by nature, was ready. She had receipts. Literal folders filled with shared expense logs from their Flagstaff home, screenshots of group texts where Kody had promised equal financial support, and even a printout of the original family emergency protocol email, the one she'd saved back when she still believed the rules applied equally to everyone. But there was something else. Something she hadn't told anyone she had. A voicemail. Allegedly recorded during a call with Kody just weeks before their final split, the audio contains a pivotal moment where he admits that the emergency fund, a fund meant to protect all their children, had been repurposed without informing. All the wives. That word, repurposed, hit Christine like a slap. She played the message again and again, not because she needed confirmation, but because she couldn't believe she had let that moment pass without realizing its full weight. The call had been long and evasive, full of Kody's usual deflections, but buried in the rambling was that one revealing line. And now, months later, it meant everything. Rumors suggest Christine saved the voicemail to a secure drive and shared it with her attorney. Some insiders claim she also played it for a sister wives producer, who allegedly gasped when they heard it. Not just because of what Kody said, but because the implications could alter everything. For the first time in years, Christine had leverage. But this wasn't about power. It was about truth. If the courts ever got involved, she wanted her side of the story straight. She wanted to protect her daughters from being left behind again. Because when your child goes through a medical emergency and your partner's first instinct is to shrug it off like a scheduling inconvenience, it's not just neglect. It's betrayal on every conceivable level. Christine hasn't publicly confirmed whether she'll ever use that voicemail. But those close to her say it gave her something more valuable than evidence. It gave her clarity. It proved that she hadn't imagined the excuses, the emotional distance, the selective responsibility. It had been real all along, and she wasn't the only one who noticed. Because inside the Brown family, the children were watching. They don't speak much in public, but they've seen everything. They saw who showed up and who didn't. And when it came to Christine's daughters, especially the one who spent several nights under fluorescent hospital lights recovering from emergency surgery, the silence spoke volumes. Behind the stage family photos and strained smiles, there lingered a heaviness that never left. Because no matter how old you are, you don't forget when a parent fails to show up in your darkest hour. Family friends say that the daughter at the center of the ordeal, struggled not just with physical recovery, but with something deeper, abandonment. It wasn't just Kody's absence during the most terrifying medical crisis of her life. It was the complete void afterward. No check-in, calls, no get-well card, no thoughtful text, unless prompted by Christine first. One insider recalls a moment about a week after the surgery. The daughter, still groggy from medication and overwhelmed by everything she had endured, allegedly turned to her mother and asked, "Does Dad not care that I almost died?" Christine, they say, had no words. There was nothing to say. Around that same time, one of the older siblings quietly began drafting a crowdfunding page. Not to post publicly, but as a backup plan. A contingency in case the bills kept climbing and Christine's savings ran dry. The draft was never published, but the fact that it existed shook Christine to her core. Her children shouldn't have to bear that weight. Not when their father could afford new boots, lavish furniture, and back and forth trips between homes. Not when their money had once been pooled. The emotional impact rippled outward. Other siblings began asking quiet questions. Why did Robyn's household never seem short on cash? Why did her children have access to private tutors, shopping trips, and high-end school clothes, while Christine's kids got vague apologies and virtual silence? One child reportedly confided in a friend, "I guess we're not all equal in Dad's eyes." Then came the holidays. According to multiple insiders, a family gathering turned tense after one of Christine's daughters, half joking but fully serious, asked Kody if he was planning to reimburse Christine for any of the hospital expenses. Kody, visibly uncomfortable, allegedly muttered something about not discussing money at dinner. The comment landed like a rock in still water. A cousin reportedly stormed out. Others stayed, but barely spoke. The warmth that had once lingered, in bits and pieces, evaporated entirely. Christine's children stopped trying to patch things up. The fracture wasn't just between husband and wife anymore. It had become generational. Her daughters now carry not only medical scars, but emotional ones, etched by a father who chose distance over involvement, apathy over action. But as the family fractured, whispers outside the home began to rise. Christine wasn't as alone as she thought. In Flagstaff, in their shared church circles, and even among former TLC crew members who had once filmed Christine's quiet resilience episode after episode, word spread fast. And what emerged was a groundswell of sympathy for Christine, not Kody. The man who had once been seen as a charismatic leader now came across to many as cold and avoidant. It started in whispers. Women in the faith community began comparing notes. How often Kody was spotted with Robyn, how rarely he appeared at family functions that didn't involve her children. One neighbor said a pastor's wife had commented, "It's a shame Christine had to go through all that alone. He's a father to all of them, or he's supposed to be." Another longtime Flagstaff resident, who had initially supported the Browns' presence in their community, allegedly told a friend that Kody's absence during the emergency made him impossible to defend. This wasn't about plural marriage. This was about basic human decency. Then came the unexpected lifeline. According to two separate sources, Christine received a quiet phone call. The person on the other end represented someone connected to a former Sister Wives crew member. They had heard what happened. They had seen the whispers online, and they wanted to help. Not publicly, not with fanfare, but discreetly. The offer, insiders say, was real. One portion of the hospital bill, estimated to be around $75,000, was covered by a private donor. Whether that donor was the crew member, themselves, or someone else close to production remains unclear. But the timing was precise. Christine had been considering selling a portion of her Arizona property to stay ahead of the mounting debt. That sale never happened. The relief arrived just in time. And reportedly, that wasn't the only help. Producers at TLC allegedly became aware of the situation. One anonymous crew member claimed that executives discussed stepping in to assist, not as a publicity stunt, but to prevent production delays. If Christine were forced into a public legal battle or financial collapse, filming would be thrown into chaos. Whether TLC followed through is uncertain. What is clear is that Christine stopped asking Kody for help. She didn't need him anymore. Because someone else had stepped in where he wouldn't, and that, more than anything, confirmed what she had feared all along. She wasn't just unsupported, she was set up to fail. But Christine wasn't done. Because what came next wasn't charity, it was strategy.
We have had so many conversations where I've said, it's done, we're not compatible. And he's agreed, and he's like, yeah, it's really sad. Like, why are we talking about that?
And Christine, she was done playing nice. Christine had always been the peacemaker, the one who swallowed frustration, smoothed over chaos, and kept the family stitched together when everyone else seemed to unravel. But that version of her, she didn't survive what happened at the hospital. Not after watching her daughter suffer. Not after quietly shouldering hundreds of thousands in medical bills. And certainly not after discovering what she believes was a deliberate financial betrayal by the man who was supposed to be her partner. According to sources close to her, Christine is no longer waiting for apologies. She's preparing for something else entirely. Legal maneuvering. Behind the scenes, Christine has allegedly been working with counsel. Quietly, methodically, with the kind of calm you only see in people who are holding undeniable truth. She's not chasing headlines or scandal. She's building a case, a real one. Whether her claim will be aimed directly at Kody or tied to shared assets remains to be seen. But what insiders can confirm is this. She's assembled an airtight trail of documentation, emails, screenshots, bank statements, shared expense records that stretch deep into their time in Flagstaff. Her focus? Patterns? Promises? Proof. That Kody acknowledged shared responsibilities. Proof that he participated in financial planning for the whole family, hers included. Proof that at one time, they all agreed there would be an emergency fund for the children. And now, at the heart of it all, a voicemail. The infamous voicemail, allegedly recorded during a conversation between Christine and Kody just weeks before the final split, contains what could be a smoking gun, a line where Kody says the emergency fund was repurposed. That word doesn't scream betrayal on its own, but in legal terms, it might. Especially if Christine can prove it referred to a communal fund, redirected without consent from the others involved. And that may not be the only recording. One source close to Christine claims she also recorded a second call, in which Kody completely contradicts himself, saying there never was an emergency fund at all. If true, that contradiction could suggest something much more serious: intentional deception. Legal experts familiar with reality TV families say these kinds of relationships exist in a gray area. Without a legal marriage, the financial obligation between partners is harder to prove, but not impossible. Written agreements, documented, behavioral patterns, good faith communications, all of that holds weight in court, especially when minor children are involved. And Christine? She has all three. She's kept meticulous records of every dollar spent since the split. Not to be petty, not out of spite, but because she saw this moment coming. The moment she'd need to show just how unbalanced things had become. And now, with the hospital bill still looming and public interest swinging in her favor, that moment might be close. Some say Christine is preparing a civil claim. Others believe she's using her leverage to force Kody into financial mediation before any recordings go public. Whatever the route, one thing is clear. She's done giving him the benefit of the doubt. Kody has always tried to control the narrative, smile for the cameras, say the right thing, talk about unity and family, let editing do the rest. But that armor is cracking. The moment Christine's hospital story hit the internet, the tone shifted. Sympathy drained. Questions started piling up. Why didn't Kody help? Why was Christine left to face it alone? Why did Robin's household continue to thrive while Christine's daughter recovered in a hospital bed, without so much as a get-well call from her father? Social media lit up. Former fans rewatched old episodes, analyzed body language, picked apart Kody's speeches on fatherhood and fairness. And the comments? Brutal. Some called him negligent. Others called him selfish. Some used a word no parent ever wants to hear: coward. The court of public opinion turned, and Kody, sources say, noticed. According to one insider with ties to TLC, Kody attempted to get ahead of the backlash. He allegedly contacted a PR specialist known for rehabilitating controversial reality stars, hoping to frame the story as complex family finances being twisted online. The PR firm reportedly declined, and the consequences didn't stop at hurt feelings. A potential brand partnership for a fatherhood-focused podcast quietly disappeared. A small Flagstaff business that had hosted the Browns in the past canceled an upcoming event. Even TLC executives began reviewing recent footage to evaluate how Kody should be portrayed moving forward. A rumor surfaced. Kody tried to renegotiate his contract. He wanted more money, reportedly citing online harassment and emotional toll. TLC's alleged response? Maybe he should spend less time negotiating and more time parenting. Meanwhile, Christine remained silent. Not out of fear, but focus. Insiders say she's been watching the fallout with a mix of heartbreak and clarity. She never wanted to bring this outside the family. But when the family stopped protecting its own, she realized silence only protected one person, Kody. And now the tide has turned. Because Christine has something Kody doesn't: receipts. And soon she may have something else: a platform. One production assistant claims Christine recently filmed a private sit-down interview, Not for a reunion, not for a confessional, but for something new, intimate, unfiltered. In it, she allegedly holds up the hospital invoice, reads the amount aloud, and one by one lays out every document she believes proves Kody not only refused to help, but actively withheld financial information that could have changed everything. Producers, sources say, were stunned. They'd seen Christine upset, seen her vulnerable, but they'd never seen her like this. Calm, precise, relentless, numbers, dates, transcripts. Whether TLC chooses to air it is still unknown. But the footage reportedly exists. And Kody? He knows. According to multiple sources, he's been made aware of Christine's documentation. He knows about the voicemail, the call logs, the possibility of everything going public, and insiders say he's furious, not just about the content, but because Christine gained so much support simply by telling the truth. But here's the twist. This isn't revenge. Christine isn't preparing legal action out of anger. She's doing it to protect the one thing Kody never prioritized: her children's well-being. The hospital bill was just the final straw. The real debt had been building for years. Emotional debt, unpaid apologies, broken promises, absences that never healed. Christine gave him chances, more than most would, and when she got nothing in return, she stopped asking. Now she doesn't need him. She has the narrative, the evidence, and a growing chorus of voices backing her up.